Hi, so what can I tell Radio Days Asia about Boom Radio? It's a concept that's been created by me and my fellow traveller, David Lloyd. We've been together for 20, 25 years on and off making radio programs and launching radio stations and running radio stations. And in July of last year, David emailed me and said, do you think there's an opportunity, a gap in the market for a radio station that really is aimed at baby boomers, those 60 to 75-year-olds? I did what I normally do when somebody suggests an opportunity to launch a business. I created a spreadsheet, ran the numbers, came back to David and said, yeah, I think there's something there. Let's work a bit harder at this. And we spent a couple of months churning the numbers through, doing a bit of research, fine-tuning what it was exactly that we thought we were going to do and where the gap in the market was. And at the end of October, we said, yeah, this really has got some legs to it. We then picked up the phone to friends and colleagues, people we've worked with in the business for 25, 30 years and said, have you got some money down the back of the sofa that you'd like to lend to us? And we eventually raised somewhere between £3.5 million over the course of about a month and a half and launched Boom Radio, as people probably will know, in mid-February. Obviously, the period between raising the money and the launch was a frantic period, but we're now on air and the response has been fantastic. I'll tell you about the response shortly, but in the meantime, I just wanted to take you through the concept of the style of radio station, because we really are trying to do something different, I think, to what has been the traditional way commercial radio has operated in the UK. The market we identified really were Radio 2 listeners, so the big BBC network for older listeners, who maybe felt that Radio 2 had moved a bit too young for them. And certainly Radio 2 themselves have said that their strategy is to try and ensure that they're targeting 35 pluses. So they obviously have a breadth of output and a breadth of audience, which means they're not specifically targeting 60 to 75-year-olds. So we looked at them specifically and we said, what is it that we think they might want from a radio station that we can deliver? And we've fine-tuned our proposition in three ways that don't really chime with how commercial radio normally operates. So the first is that we cover, from a musical perspective, a really, really broad waterfront. We start with the 1950s. We play some 50s rock and roll, and there are some standards in there too, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, etc. We then obviously concentrate most of our firepower on the 60s and 70s, as you'd expect for a station that's aimed at people who are in their 60s and 70s. But we also play more recent material from the 80s, 90s onwards, and we have some current material in there. In fact, there are about 20 tracks. Some of them are albums, in fact, where we play 2 or 3 tracks, and some are singles that we call for on a fairly regular basis. So a listener to Boom that gets to listen for an hour, hour and a half a day will hear a new track alongside older material. So that breadth of output from the 60s to today is really not something any other commercial station, mainstream commercial station, is doing. The second big difference is that we are really going deep into the catalogue for the acts and the eras that we represent. So we are playing not just the big hits by the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Dylan and Elvis and the Rolling Stones, but we're playing more of the secondary hits, even sometimes the album tracks that we know and love, but possibly have not been featured as heavily. That allows us to play many, many more tracks than a normal radio station would expect to play by an individual artist and by all artists in a particular genre. That means the repetition is massively lower. Now, we know that comes at a risk. We know that when you launch a radio station with a tight playlist, you're playing one hit after another. They're all bangers. Everybody loves it. Everybody thinks it's fantastic. But we felt that the audience that we were trying to aim at, particularly if we were to pull them away from the BBC, would be an audience that experienced that breadth of track, wanted that lack of repetition, and many of them had probably given up on commercial radio over that intervening 25, 30 years as commercial radio became slightly more formulaic and slightly tighter in terms of their music proposition. So not only a big waterfront of eras, but also great depth of catalogue. So those are the two big music things that we're doing. The third element is the range of presenters and presentation style. So again, in the commercial sector, particularly with the niche services targeting older audiences, and particularly those that are the new digital offshoots of the big brands, presenters are very low in the mix. You might have a breakfast show, you might have a drive time show, possibly, but not all the time. The rest of the time, the station is pretty much a music jukebox. That works from an efficiency perspective for the operators, but perhaps not really works well in terms of satisfying the desires of those listeners. When we talked to them in our research, they said they missed presenters. They missed the presenters they'd grown up with. They missed the presentation style if they were listening to commercial radio. So we went almost completely the opposite way to the commercial sector currently, who are running 3-hour, 4-hour, even 5-hour shows with the number of presenters that they have. And we decided to go for 2-hour shows typically across the day. So we have an early breakfast, then we have a breakfast, then a mid-morning, then a lunchtime, then a mid-afternoon, an early evening, a mid-evening, a late evening, and then we do overnights and we rotate again. So we're probably running 8 presenter-led shows during each daytime day, and as many, if not more, at the weekends. Now, that's way more than our competitors are doing. It is much more like a rich BBC network would do. We're not paying our presenters the same rates that a rich BBC network would do, but they're doing it for the love of it and for the fun of it, and because they want to be part of a great adventure like we are. So that style of presentation seems to be working brilliantly for us. Now, the other thing, just to point out, is that we also try and flavor the music for every show to suit the presenter concerned. So we know that Nicky Horn, who does our 4 till 6 show in the afternoon, is known by his audience for being more of a rock presenter than a pop presenter. So we try not to feed him too many Shawaddy hits, and we try and feed him a bit more Free or Cream or Clapton. So he gets a bit more of a music style that works for him. Other presenters like David Hamilton, who's on at lunchtimes, who is known for playing really big hits and his million sellers and his number ones, he will get more of that. So we try and target and tailor the music for the presenters. We also give all of the presenters, if they want it, some degree of choice themselves in terms of what they play. We think that makes them happy, and if they're happy, we're happy. So all of those things we think combine to make Boom a radically different listen to the traditional commercial operation. And how's it going? I've got about a minute left to tell you. It's going brilliantly well. David and I cannot believe the feedback that we're getting from listeners. We've simply been blown away. Thousands and thousands of emails from people telling us how they love the station and want to listen for as long as they possibly can. The streaming stats are, we've shown them to other industry figures who've said they're the best launch streaming stats they've ever seen. The time spent listening online that we're getting is simply unbelievable. The numbers that we have today are numbers we anticipated not getting until June or July of this year in terms of streaming. We obviously don't have the DAB stats because we're on DAB in London and a few other major markets. They will come in time, but certainly the initial indications are that we really have cracked it, we hope, with Boom Radio. That's my 9 minutes. Hope you've enjoyed what I've had to say, and keep on listening.